All right, ready to dive into something a little different. We're talking leadership lessons from Jesus.
Okay, I see that raised eyebrow.
Right. You might be thinking, hold on, is this a sermon now? But trust me, this isn't about religion. It's about practical advice, the kind that can help anyone, anywhere be a better leader. And honestly, the source material really surprised
It
us.
really makes you rethink some assumptions, that's for sure.
Exactly. We're digging into Surprising Lessons on Leadership from Jesus by Bill Gaultiere. And let me tell you, that title is spot on.
Yeah, it's not your typical business book, that's for sure.
Not at all. In fact, one of the first things Gaultiere points out is kind of funny when you think about it. He's read tons of leadership books by Christian authors, but almost none of them actually use Jesus as an example of, well, leadership.
It's like we separate the spiritual side from the practical stuff, even when it comes to how we guide and influence others.
It's true. But when you actually look at how Jesus led people, it was really different, especially back then. Like, think about it. Back in the day, leadership was all about power,
Yeah.
authority. You don't question the guy in charge.
Right, very top-down, very hierarchical.
Exactly. But Jesus, he wasn't about that whole my way or the highway thing at all.
He was much more about inviting people in, creating an environment where they wanted to be a part of what was happening. And you have to consider, during that time period, that was radical. In a time when leaders were often these almost untouchable figures demanding obedience, he's going around saying, hey, come hang out with me, let's talk. It's a big contrast.
It's so true, like the whole dinner party thing.
Oh, yeah, good
Yeah.
example.
Gaultiere talks about how Jesus was all about sharing meals,
Hmm.
having these relaxed settings where people could connect. It wasn't about networking or trying to get ahead. It was about building genuine relationships.
And that's something that's still so relevant today, right? That authenticity, it's crucial, whether you're leading a team at work or a community group or even just in your family. People respond to that genuine desire to connect. So how can you create that kind of inviting atmosphere in your leadership roles? Something to think about.
Now imagine for a second, if Jesus had to do a performance review.
Okay, this I gotta hear.
It wouldn't be about hitting your KPIs, would it? No spreadsheets, no cold calls quota.
Nope, no PowerPoint presentations either.
Exactly. The book really emphasizes how Jesus was focused on individual impact, not just numbers. He wasn't measuring success by how many followers he had, but by the depth of his influence on each person's life.
It's quality over quantity, like they say. And that's such a powerful reminder because it's easy to get caught up in the metrics, especially these days. But real leadership, lasting impact, it comes from those individual connections, those moments of genuine mentorship.
And I love how Gaultiere uses a really specific example to back this up. He talks about how when Jesus is describing his work, he doesn't say, oh, I helped this huge group of people. It's Peter, James, John.
He remembers their names.
Yes, he focuses on the individual people, the ones he really invested in, helped them to grow. It really drives home the point. This wasn't about building a following. It was about building leaders.
By investing in them as people first.
And speaking of the people Jesus was surrounded by, another thing that really struck me is how diverse that group was. You got Peter, always ready to jump into action, sometimes without thinking, maybe a little impulsive.
The classic type A personality, always ready to go.
Exactly. And then you have someone like Andrew, quieter, more thoughtful, but incredibly influential in his own way. And that really hit me because it made me realize there's no one right way to be a leader.
It's like we try to put people in these boxes, tell them to be a good leader, you got to be this way. But Jesus was working with all these different personalities, helping them find their way to lead,
It's so true.
Mm.
And that's such an important lesson for anyone listening, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to fit some mold to be an effective leader.
Exactly. In fact, recognizing and valuing what makes each person unique, that's how you build a really strong team. Just like Jesus did with his disciples. Embrace those differences.
And it wasn't just about personality either,
Yeah.
Gaultiere points out how Jesus wasn't afraid to let people see his human side. He wasn't some distant, always serious figure.
It's like we expect leaders to be these perfect robots, but people relate to authenticity.
Exactly. The book even talks about him turning water into wine at a party.
Right. And playing with kids, things like that.
It showed you that leadership doesn't have to be so serious all the time. It's okay to have fun, to enjoy yourself, to build those genuine connections.
Building rapport, having a sense of humor, those things are important too.
So we've got this image of Jesus as relatable, someone who enjoys a good time, someone who values individuality. But then Gaultiere brings up this period in his life that's often overlooked.
Yeah.
Those 18 years where he basically disappears from the narrative.
Oh, right, before his public ministry really takes off.
Yeah, 18 years of what seems like pretty ordinary work. It's like a leadership boot camp that nobody talks about.
And, it's easy to get caught up in this idea that success should happen overnight. We see it everywhere, right? But Jesus' story is a good reminder that real growth takes time.
It does. What was he doing during those hidden years? What was he learning? It's interesting to think about those quiet periods in our own lives. The times when we feel stuck, like we're not where we're supposed to be yet.
We've all been there, right?
What if those are the times we're actually building the foundation for something bigger, though? It's about trusting the process, like you were saying.
Embracing those moments and realizing that even when it doesn't feel like it, there's still growth happening beneath the surface.
It's tough, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially these days with social media. It's easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves to others, feeling like we're not doing enough, not being enough.
Oh, absolutely. That constant pressure to measure up, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And it can really make you lose sight of your own path.
Which brings me to another point that really resonated with me. Gaultiere talks about how even though Jesus faced criticism, pressure, all of that, he stayed true to his purpose, his values.
He didn't let the haters get to him.
Right. He wasn't swayed by public opinion because he wasn't looking for validation from the crowd.
He had that strong internal compass guiding him.
And that's such a powerful reminder for all of us, especially today, right? I mean, who hasn't struggled with wanting to be liked, wanting to fit in? But as a leader, you can't let that need for external validation drive your decisions. It takes guts to stand up for what you believe in, especially when you're the one people are looking to for answers. But honestly, that's something we all deal with, whether we're leading a team or just trying to navigate our own lives.
It's that inner voice, trusting your gut, even when it's hard. And, something else that struck me from the book, Gaultiere doesn't shy away from the fact that even Jesus didn't have all the answers figured out all the time.
That's kind of reassuring, actually.
Right. The book talks about how he took time to reflect, to pray, to really observe what was going on around him before making those big decisions.
He wasn't just snapping his fingers, making miracles happen.
Not at all. And think about that. For someone in his position, it would have been easy to feel like he had to have it all together, But there are moments where it's like, I don't know, let me think about this. And that really struck me because it's okay to not have all the answers immediately. In fact, sometimes that's the most important thing a leader can do.
It's true. Sometimes you just need a minute to process. Right?
Exactly. It's about knowing when to step back, to ask for guidance, to be open to adjusting course if you need to, because you're not always going to get it right on the first try. And admitting that's not weakness, that's strength.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I mean, honestly, going into this, I don't think either of us expected to find so much practical advice from, the Bible.
Yeah.
It just goes to show wisdom can come from unexpected places.
You got to keep an open mind, right? Challenge your assumptions a little.
For sure. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the biggest takeaway for me is this. True leadership, the kind that lasts, it's not about power. It's about empowerment. It's about leading with love, intention, and being genuine, just like we were talking about.
Recognizing the humanity in yourself and in the people you're leading. Building those connections, creating an environment where everyone feels seen and valued, that's what makes the difference.
Absolutely. So if you take just one thing away from this conversation, let it be this. How can you lead with more love, more intention, more authenticity in your own life? How can you empower the people around you to be their best selves? We'd love to hear your thoughts, so share your aha moments with us on social media using #TheDeepDive. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.